I'm Jon Miller with propanebuzz.com, excited to bring you BAMWX.com's official winter of 2019-2020 forecast. And before we do that, I want to thank Thompson Gas for being a great sponsor of the Propane Buzz. There may come a time in the life of your independently owned propane retail business where you look to do something else. You've worked hard, you want to go enjoy the fruits of your labor. When that time comes and you do look to sell and consider passing on your legacy to someone else, give Thompson Gas a call. Visit their website, sellmypropanecompany.com.
Hey folks, Jon Miller here, Propane Buzz, propanebuzz.com. Also proudly wearing my Flashpoint Energy Partners shirt for those of you who missed our conversation on Flashpoint. Flashpoint is Propane Buzz's parent company, same owners, same people. We just offer more services, including wholesale propane services. So check out our website, flashpointep.com. The other face you're seeing here is Michael Clark of BAMWX.com. Some of you, this may be the first time you're meeting Michael. At least meeting him on the interwebs like this. Michael is one of the head honchos at BAMWX.com, a professional and commercial meteorological service company, one that we have aligned ourselves with since I launched the Propane Buzz as an independent site back in June of 2018. We also have a partnership with them where I call it a BAM Lite subscription, and you can get daily updates, daily video commentary, most everyday video commentary, daily extended forecasts that we get from BAM, and then we share to you, and it's just $19.95. It's like ridiculous. I'm surprised Michael even let me do this. So this time of year, you're in propane or you're in energy, and you're not taking advantage of something like this, I really have to question how serious you are about maximizing your profit and your bottom line. Because as I like to say, an informed retailer is a more profitable retailer. And it's not just information pursuant to where propane prices are. It's ideas where they could go. And that's what leads us to talking with Michael today. Not that I don't like talking with Michael a lot, and we're going to do this more regularly, at least try to touch base once a month. But Michael, October is a month that I get really excited about because I'm a weather weenie and a big nerd with all this. I know enough to be dangerous, but I have friends like you who are actually college-educated meteorologists that can, help keep my excitement in check or just make sure I don't hurt anybody with what I say, think, or write about. This is a month where you guys really kind of put you sign your name to the check. You go out there and you put forth your winter weather forecasts, and you guys at BAM have been doing a lot of work. So let's just dive into it. What are some of the climate drivers that you believe are going to be present with us this winter, and why?
Yeah, great way to lead into this. And I think, looking at winter from a step back, just in a whole picture, if you will, from afar, this winter looks like it has good potential to be cold. And I would even rival it somewhere in a top 10, like 8th through 12th ranking in terms of like GWHDDs or
I think it has degree days, yes.
Yes, I think it has potential to be that. So some of the main drivers are certainly going to be the orientation of ENSO, the El Nino Southern Oscillation Index, or the equatorial sea surface temperature anomaly there in the Pacific Ocean.
Right.
As of the last, about week or so, we've really taken on this Modoki look. And this is a true Modoki look on the El Nino side of things, or in the Pacific side of things right now, where it's a true central-based El Nino, and in the eastern portion of the Pacific, it's cold. It's like La Nina State, if you will. So that some of those winters are really big hitters. So the ENSO orientation is number one.
Which, real quickly, that just means where the pool of warmer than normal sea surface temperatures is. And Modoki or Modokai, I still don't know how to pronounce it. Is a Japanese word. It's one of my favorite words in all of the language I've ever encountered. It means the same, but different. And so a Modokai or Modoki El Nino has the pool of warmer than average, warmer than normal sea surface temperatures, more westerly based in the Pacific Ocean, as opposed to more easterly based just off the coast of South America. Because when we have that, you kind of can cancel Christmas on a North American winter relative to cold. But when you have the pool of warmer water out farther west, as you mentioned, that has been in the past a good harbinger of colder than normal anomalies in North America.
Yep, absolutely. Now, one of the caveats with that is the PDO and the warm North Pacific body of water, which is associated in kind of the northeastern portion of the Pacific Ocean off the west coast of the U.S. There's only been 2 winters where we've had a similar type setup to the central based El Nino and these positive PDO or warmer waters to the north. And that's the winters of 77, 78, and 14 and 15.
I don't know about, I mean, 77, anytime you mention one of those holy grail winters of the 70s, you've got my attention.
Yeah. And I'm reluctant, honestly, John, to talk about that because
I don't blame you.
You know, it's like I know the expectation of the late 70s and today people wouldn't even be able to comprehend that level of cold. And I'm not saying it's going to be that, but 77, 78, I can't get it to stop popping up in research. So it does have some type of merit. Now, you know, so looking more into other pattern drivers, we are in a deep solar minimum. We've gone several hundred days here without any activity on the sun. The research in a nutshell can correlate to a better chance of high latitude blocking during solar minimum periods. Example, 08, 09, 9, 10 winters, and then the early 90s, 93, 94, 95, 96. Those are some cold winters. Those were some solar minimums as well. And I think we're challenging possibly a grand solar minimum period even. So that's a big factor into this. The other main driver here is going to be the QBO. And essentially the QBO is stratospheric winds at the equator near the ENSO regions. Simply put, we don't need to get into all the nuts and bolts of the QBO, but the trend, the descent of the QBO as it's going, changing directions, when you couple that with low solar, favors blocking. There's good research on low solar and negative QBO that can correlate to more high latitude blocking in winter. So
I put some images up relative to what blocking looks like that people are looking at right now as we're talking. So
perfect. So with that, we have a preliminary analog package where we've taken all this into consideration. And you'll see here on the slide where our temperature analogs are looking at the winters of 69-70, 79-80, 90-91, 93-94, 95-96, and 04-05. Now, if you're there, we could put 77-78 in there, and I didn't put it in there purposely because I don't want people thinking that's going to happen just yet. But that is a usable analog, but I left it out because of extremes.
It would have made the whole damn thing look like Barney, pretty much. I mean, it'd have been the deepest shades of purple you could have, and I don't blame you. I mean, it's really difficult. In one hand, it's exciting, but the other hand, it's difficult to put in one of the most significant statistical outlier years into a forecast because those things are so rare, they're so extreme. In a study of any statistics and probabilities, you try to get rid of the crazy low and you try to get rid of the crazy high. I'm not saying that's what you did, but I understand if that's why you did it. Yeah. Because already this is looking pretty darn good without even 77, 78 factored into it.
Right. Yeah. And if I had a personal favorite analog right now for all you guys listening, it would be the winter of 95, 96. That's my personal favorite, the one I feel the most comfortable with. And you're looking at a top 10 cold winter there in that terms. That was a good winter. Now, if we go to the next slide, what we're looking at here is considering the descending QBO in the low solar state and the neutral ENSO overall. Now, the central based nature of the ENSO regions is not going to meet any classification that NOAA CPC monitors. So you can't go to NOAA or to CPC and look for answers from them on this. They don't monitor this. So even if we are in that Modoki style El Nino, you're not going to get information from that in the weekly ENSO reports from NOAA. They just don't monitor it. So that is factored in here. What you see are years where we have the negative Arctic oscillation and the risk, the flip side, where we had these same years with positive Arctic oscillation. Now, there's far more blocking events than there are non-blocking events. Right. Okay. Even to the left, where I combine the QBO solar analogs, there's more that had negative Arctic oscillations than that did not. And essentially, that just means blocking in the higher latitudes to dislodge the cold into the U.S. All right. Now, but there is that risk. There have been a couple of these setups that did not produce the blocking. And so you have to show those. Winter of 0102 or 92, 93, those have to be considered. So go ahead, John.
I was going to say, you do have to consider those. And while more analog years are favoring the colder look, does climate, and I know I'm going to use a term that's going to trigger a lot of you, but climate change, because when you look at the background state of the climate now compared to the 70s was a time frame when the background state of the climate was much colder than it is now. So if you don't want to call it climate change, or I'm not talking about man-made, this isn't a political commentary. Things are warmer right now than they were 30, 40 years ago. They may be colder in 40 years from now, given you look back at the history of the earth and natural oscillations and cycling. This isn't a political statement. Do you factor the warmer background state into your forecasts?
Absolutely, 100%. I mean, I couldn't agree with what you said anymore, because, when you look at December since 2000, they're pretty warm. They're just warm.
Yeah. 13 was one of the few I can remember that, wasn't.
Yep. And so, and from a sea surface temperature standpoint, 13, 14 has merit. It really does. It has merit.
With the warmer temperatures up near the Gulf of Alaska, for sure.
Yeah. So, again, if there's a risk aside to this outlook that we need to consider, it's that blocking doesn't develop, and you're going to get the outcome on the right, and you're going to be warmer. Okay. So,
but you're more confident in the other outlook, I would imagine. Correct.
Okay. I favor the other side. It's more of a 60-40 blend, and you'll see that on the next slide with our outlooks. We've check marked the key points. Top is the DJF official outlook. If there is a risk here where it could be colder, it's going to be from Texas to Florida, I believe. It's possible we are too warm there, but honestly, the reason we are is climate change. That's why we are so warm in the Deep South. It has nothing to do with analogs or model data. It has everything to do with trends over the last 18 years since 2000. And that's important. You can't argue those trends. So it has to be factored in. Now, I still think it can be a really good winter from Boston to New York City to the Great Lakes, Chicago, up towards Fargo, Minneapolis areas. So you're still getting some big cities with some big cold in there. And when you look at the end of the day, our GWHDD outlook is a 26-25. Our analogs are colder at a 27-15. Last year, we were a 25-73. So we are favoring colder than last year, and we are favoring colder than a 10 and a 30-year normal winter. Again, I think we can rival top 10 somewhere between the 8th and 12th position in that rank. All right. Enso neutral conditions likely to persist. Modoki style El Nino with the warmth in the western Enso regions. QBO solar combination is less favorable for midwinter sudden stratospheric warming events. However, the descending QBO and the low solar should help to maintain or develop a negative AO, regardless of sudden stratospheric warming. I don't think that's going to be a big hit this winter as of right now. A lot of times winters are dependent on, we need an SSW, we need a sudden stratospheric warming and break the polar vortex in half.
Right.
In winter of 13-14, that never happened. The polar vortex was elongated. It was never broke down. It was very strong, and it was elongated in an egg-like shape. And we just had a consistent tap of cold air. It never went away. So you don't have to have an SSW. And I will say this year it is less likely than usual to have one.
It was the negative AO in 13-14 that dislodged that colder air, and it happened just to dislodge it a little bit more to our side of the hemisphere than to the Russian and European side of it.
Exactly. Exactly. So the PDO, or the warm northern Pacific Ocean, favors warmth on the west coast, which would promote a negative EPO, which again favors cooler air into the northern and eastern U.S. A negative EPO is essentially blocking in Alaska. I always say if you're wearing shorts in Alaska, you're wearing winter coats in the U.S., vice versa.
Well, it's just from what I've seen from what you guys have done through the years, where you have a ridge meaning warmth, a high pressure, and then you have a trough on the back side of it. The back side of it, meaning the eastern side of it, and it probably means there's a trough on the west. It's kind of like they alternate. They just kind of take turns.
Yep. Yeah. Where there's a ridge, there's a trough, and that's very true. So. The last part, the part of the overall outlook, is the AMO is a risk. That's the Atlantic multi-decadal oscillation. That's essentially the Atlantic sea surface temperatures. The current state favors colder risks. If it starts to flip, it would favor a warmer risk for the East Coast. Right now, it's kind of teetering back and forth. Being that it's a multi-decadal oscillation, I don't think it's going to make a major flip. But that's a risk that we have to watch that in the month of November, right? So you see our temperature outlooks, and again, to do this in December is a major risk. I'll tell you, there's not a lot of model data that supports any of what I'm showing you right now. There's one or two outlier model runs, but the European seasonal is a torched forecast for winter. It's very warm. It's ridging all across the eastern U.S. However, the European seasonals that run in October for DJF in the last 5 winters have been around 19% accurate. So you factor that in.
Well, I was just going to say, having been someone who has given opinions for much of his adult life, and sometimes breaking stories and other, careers I was involved in, it's a little lonely when you step out on that ledge and you make a forecast like this, when you don't have any other backup or any other support, and you're just basically going on your own skill. It is interesting to hear that the European seasonals have performed that poorly, because the European has this reputation as being the god of all gods of models. And I guess relative to models, it may be better, but that's like, having in the land of the blind, the man with one eye is king. So you're the best model and you're performing at 19%.
Yep. It's exactly it. If you look at the American multi-model ensemble, what we call the NMME, which is what we run here in the U.S., it's the warm bias, the skill of that model is so bad. You can't, a good seasonal forecaster cannot put weight on that, or you just can't. So, something to consider.
This is something that will come up, because I'm going to get people that email me, always do, usually friends that are just trying to yank my chain a little bit and say, hey, your BAM guys are showing cold. Everything else I'm seeing everywhere is all warm. Well, there are a number of meteorological companies who do, as it's said in the trade, like to hug the models and base their forecasts entirely and mostly off of what the models are showing, because quite frankly, in my opinion, you're not the one saying this, me, just the propane guy. They aren't skilled, or they lack certain skills. So I'm glad that you guys trust what you've learned and trust your experience. What about November? What about getting a jump start on this winter? And what about March? Can it linger? What are your models looking like there? Or not your models, what are your forecasts rather?
Yeah, so the shoulder months here of the demand season, November we think is certainly has plenty of cold to offer up in shots across the northern plains, Great Lakes, and east. 580 GWHDDs is the call. It's colder than the 10 and the 30 year. Our analogs are close to 600. Last year we were 666. Don't think we're as cold as last year, but that doesn't mean it can't happen. You throw a typhoon in there, and you know what happens when you get one of those. So, but I do think the cold on the backside into March can certainly linger. I think cold can linger into April, and I think that's tied to the deep solar minimum that we're in. When we go through these solar minimum periods, winters are statistically longer and harsher across the U.S. So that is certainly factored into that. And that's the general theme for that right now. Again, guys, to clarify, I'm not saying this is some kind of Armageddon cold winter. I'm not saying it's just going to blast your face off cold. But what I'm saying is perhaps it's more of a consistent,
rateable,
cooler than average cold, sustainable. Rather than what we've had the last couple of years, we've had this 2-week periods of extreme cold, and then we get warm.
Right. And I from a propane retail business owner's perspective, you couldn't draw up a winter any better than this. It can get too cold because equipment breaks. Gas plants have production that's shut in when it gets too cold. That's no good for anybody because when you need it most, you can't get as much as you want. A winter in a look of something like this is, all right, there'll be some lines for trucks at terminals, but it won't be too bad because everybody's keeping up. It's not a peak and a valley, a peak and a valley. This would be a magnificent setup. I would sign up for this right now, but unfortunately, I don't get to sign up for that sort of thing. I've got some friends in northern Indiana who love to snowmobile. Last slide I think you have for us is your precipitation. What's precip looking like for this winter?
Yeah, so precipitation in general for December, January, February should favor above normal, especially in the Ohio Valley, Mid-Atlantic, and interior Northeast. If there is an area where snow is above normal, I think it can be somewhere from Indy to Columbus to Pittsburgh over towards New York City, possibly Boston. That stands the best chance of being much above the normal snow. And what I mean is closer to 135 to 150% of the normal. So if you average 25 inches, maybe you're going to get 30 to 35, something like that. And that's a first to last flake outlook. That's basically November 1 to March 31, including all of those months. So I think you're going to find a pretty active storm track in the Ohio Valley and in the Northeast. And I think you're also going to find clippers can be rather prevalent in the Great Lakes as well. So that's kind of the idea. The South, that's something to consider. The dryness may linger. And when we look at next year into the spring, into the growing season, droughts always like to start somewhere and crawl somewhere else. So something to think ahead on next year.
All right. Well, I'd also sign up for this because Tulsa, Oklahoma looks like warmer than normal, and then the rest of the country that I sell to is colder than normal. So I would like that. But anyway, there's propane retailers here that wouldn't like that. So as always, Michael, we really appreciate your time, your expertise. I'm excited to see if this materializes. One last thing for you, the harvest. This is the slowest maturing corn crop on record. It's slower than 2009. 2009 was maybe the biggest hitting grain drying year we've ever had relative to propane. I don't think we're going to have that this year because the crop is not as healthy. There's going to be, it's going to be spotty, widespread. There's a cold shot coming this weekend that well advertised by you guys a couple of weeks ago. You were talking about this, and I sent out some of your maps, and some friends of mine gave me grief saying, "What are you talking about? This service we subscribe to saying it's blowtorch all the way through. These frost risks. What are you saying?" Well, there's potentially record historic snowstorm coming up that you guys were talking about 2 weeks ago. Is there a chance for cooler temperatures to persist a little bit longer in October, delaying the harvest even further?
In the Northern Plains, yes. Northern Plains, I do think that's a possibility. I mean, you're talking a snowstorm that's probably going to drop 2 feet of snow in some spots in the Dakotas. Mm-hmm. So that can modify the air there in itself. And I think we're looking at another strong cold front around the 20th, 25th of October from
because
another
typhoon. Yeah. That was something I wanted to say earlier because you said, as you know, a typhoon can make it colder, and I don't think most people watching this know you get typhoons in the Pacific Ocean, and they say recurve. It's like, what do you mean they recurve? They're just curving, but they curve back to the east and they head up into the Bering Sea. And research has shown that 16 to 18 days later, the downstream effects will be felt in North America. And typically this time of year, that can induce more cold because you're talking about low pressure.
Yeah, I mean, the recurve right now is already impacting the charts in the 11 to 15. And then once it gets into the Bering Sea, it can add a reinforcing shot of cold into the first week of November. So it can actually do two things. It can be a twofer, if you will. So, and again, that's an outside of the box method. That is an unorthodox method that we use here that works pretty well. And some people are like, what in the devil are you talking about? But that's just part of what we do. Now, we're not 100%. That isn't always going to pan out, but it works pretty well most of the time.
Yeah, it does. And I will say this, and I know some of you watching this will say, oh, Jon, you're just saying this because you're affiliated with it. We give 100% of the subscription revenues to BAM. I love being partnered with these guys because in my experience of watching meteorologists, I follow over 50 meteorologists on Twitter. I've been following most of them for the past 6 years. I search every single day this time of year for long-term forecasts. I keep spreadsheets. I'm a geek. And I go back and I grade. I have my own grading systems, right? And if these guys at BAM weren't any good, I still love them, but I probably wouldn't be hitching my wagon with them and attaching my name to them. In my experience, the last 5 years, they have performed better than anyone I've seen consistently over the last 5 years. And I think you guys get it right 70-75% of the time based upon my experience. I'm talking year round, summer and winter. And that is a heck of a batting average. If it's more than 75% and I just shortchanged you, go ahead and slap me right now. But
no, it's not. That's a good number. I always say we're 7 out of 10.
Yeah, and that's a really, really high batting average. So I'm pleased that we can bring these guys to you all. This went out to the entire industry, so this was free. And I'm pleased for the folks that want to sign up for just $20 a month. I mean, sign up for 1 month and just check it out. And if you don't like it, then cancel after month 1. Big deal. But I think you're going to like what you see. And every day I'm sending out information. Yesterday I sent out information talking about this potential typhoon recurve. Propane retailers, you're going to stay on the cutting edge of information if you do this. So, Michael, thanks as always for jumping on with us. We'll be talking with you soon, okay?
Yeah, thanks so much, guys. Take care.